Yeah, I'm teasing.
Not a problem. I want to talk about the EP, and then we'll kind of roll the videotape back here a little bit. So this is a departure. Kind of these stripped down acoustic versions of these songs. What were you trying to get at with doing this?
Well, I think that the fan base has known me for doing that kind of thing for a long time, and they've been asking for an acoustic record out of me for years. And I've been doing the VIP thing for like 100. We've been capping it like at 150 people, where I'll play for a solid 45 minutes before I even do the main show, every night before my headlining tours. So they've been coming for years with signs of these underground songs, all the album cuts, and it's just kind of become a thing, So I went to my label and I just said, hey guys, between the Slow Heart record and the new full record that I'm gonna make, I'd like to put out an acoustic EP and go kind of tour around it and play it in music in a different capacity. So it's been such an amazing reaction to it. So I'll probably do this more often.
Right. That's great. And I think there are 6 or 7 tracks on the EP.
7, I believe.
7, yeah. So and you went back. I mean, you went through your catalog to kind of choose what to put on there. What was the criteria? How did a song make it on this?
I mean, for me, it was just there was a couple songs like California and In California. That was a song from 10 years ago or so.
Yeah.
That one and Come Home With You. Those were both songs that my dad loved years ago, and he used to always talk about that. And on his way to the Mayo Clinic every day, he would talk about those 2 songs. So for me personally, I've just always felt like those melodies were so strong. I think that was the main thing, is I had to have the songs that I felt like were really powerful melodies that I could just sing a cappella, and they're gonna stand up on their own. It wasn't about the bombastic production. So for me, it wasn't necessarily, I'm not thinking so much of a cohesive unit of songs the way I do with albums. It was just about the body of work and what songs were gonna speak in that capacity, recording in that way. And it was tough because I wanted to do 30 songs, but I'll be able to come back and for the most part, I wanted to pull from old songs. There was only a couple new ones, and I wanted to, and probably the next time I do it after doing this is I'll probably just pull from all old songs, because I've written probably over 1,000 tunes, and it's tough watching those things just collect dust.
Yeah. So in addition to stripping back the instrumentation, how does it affect you in terms of the vocals? You got to kind of...
You got to bring it.
You got to bring it.
You got to bring it. There's nothing to hide behind. You know what I mean? So there's nothing. And I try to do this thing it's... I wanted to keep everything super stripped. And even with the vocal, I sang that whole record in one day. Like, I did all the backgrounds, I did the leads, and I wanted it to be what it was. Like, I would take one pass and that's what you got. Like, it wasn't cutting and pasting, it wasn't any of that kind of stuff. So I don't think we cut and paste on one single song on that thing. So it was like what you heard was the laydown from front to back.
Yeah, and a song like, just because it's a recent song, Plead the Fifth.
Yeah.
Which I particularly like, this more stripped back.
That song is one of those where, that was one of them where, after I recorded Plead the Fifth, I rearranged it acoustically to go out on the road and kind of like play it in my VIP thing. And I fell even more in love with the song, with how I was doing it, and the lyrics spoke to me so much more heavy. So that was one of them that was one of my favorites on the record, where when I went to record the album, I was like, I would like to pull that one off of this record and redo it.
Yeah. Is some of this, somewhat reminiscent of the way the songs got written? Going back to the kind of origination?
With a song like Plead the Fifth, it wasn't. That was written with the track first. So it was like putting the music all together, rocking from the start. But most of the time when I write music, it's like California, that was how it originated. And then I did like a full bombastic demo for it, and it lost its luster. So I had to figure out how to go back and capture the magic of what that song was. So I just took everything out.
Yeah, and particularly, I wanted to talk to you about it in California, because first of all, it very much obviously pays tribute to Tom Petty.
Yeah.
A beloved figure in music, particularly here in Southern California. What did Tom Petty's music mean to you?
I discovered Tom Petty when I was about 15. I had a buddy that had this Honda Prelude, which with the spoiler on the back, and like that car was like the magic ride to me. It was like I still want a Honda Prelude because of that. I've actually like legit been looking for like a 1999 Honda Prelude.
If you're gonna find one, Los Angeles is the place.
Preferably with a few cigarette stains on the dashboard. His dad was a big, this guy that had that car, his dad was a huge Petty fan. And he was turned on Petty from his dad, so he was playing one of the Petty records in the car one day, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. So I was 15 and I've been listening to Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all the 80s rock, and then all the stuff my dad was playing, like the Seeger and Jackson Brown, and then I heard Petty and I was just like, wow, these melodies and how simplistic so much. And when you're a songwriter, you learn that the simplistic stuff is so difficult. It's so difficult. So for me, I was just immediately like, I wore Petty out through my whole high school years. It was just, man, I just loved it. So, and I kind of went away from it for a while, and I came back to it, but I just love what Petty stood for. That was my thing. He was a true, he was about what I always wanted it to be about. It wasn't about the money and the fame and the bullshit. It was all about the music and how the whole song even came about was us talking about him first, but then talking about the vanity of the world, and that's when you're hearing some of those lines, it's like trying to tie all that in together. So,
and you wrote that song with your friend Charlie Worsham, who, by the way, you said something about him, and it caught my ear. You said he's moved by the small things in the world. I love that, but I want you to explain what it means to you.
Well, I think that's why we get along so well, is that, I actually brought him out on tour on this acoustic tour, and I've always felt at times very alone in this world because of the way my mind works, and I feel like there's a lot of people kind of sleepwalking through life, and you're not really paying attention to all the things that are going on around you. I've always been truly, deeply, deeply affected by the small things, not only the big things, which the big things are easy to be affected by, but I've always been affected by the small things, and Charlie's one of those, his soul works that way too, so I think we've always been soul brothers in that sense, and then there's just that, we have so much respect for what each other does artistically, and we've just become good buddies through the years because of that.
Yeah. One of the great traditions in Nashville is songwriting, co-writing. There's a whole world around this, which you learned obviously. But I'm wondering, you moved to Nashville in 2004, I think.
I think so.
A
lot of it gets hazy. I've forgotten a whole lot. Yeah.
The first time that you walked into a co-write, what was that experience like?
I was about to throw up on myself. No, I've been writing by myself so long, man. I don't know how this is gonna go. It's a little bit of a nerve-wracking thing, and you put yourself out there, and you learn the ins and outs of writing, as you move along. But it's definitely it's a new process, and when you hadn't done it, it's a vulnerable, very vulnerable.
Because you're basically exposing yourself to a stranger.
Yeah, and it was, you kind of learn the ins and outs of. Dan Couch was one of the first people that I was co-writing with, and he didn't have a publishing deal. I was newly signed. I was so green, and we just got to talking about life in the room the first day we were together, and I just immediately was like, man, what a solid human. And we became thick as thieves, and I can say that Dan helped me a lot, I think, through that, because he was able to make me really take a breath and be like, it's gonna all be good. And since then, and we had the crazy story together. I mean, he was offered once we started writing all these groups of songs that were on the Up All Night record, he started getting a lot of heat from publishing deals, and he had never had a single on the radio. He had been in town for, I want to say, 14 years, and his wife had stood by him while he had minimal publishing deals here and there that might have been, you know, very small fee, where he had to give away all of his publishing just to have the publishing deal. She was a full-time nurse, but she stuck with him, and then when we started getting all the heat for the songs we were writing, he started having publishing doors knock on the, publishing companies knock on his door. And he stood his ground and was like, man, I believe in this thing so much. So he kept all his publishing, and then it popped. And
good for him.
Dan's riding high right
good
now.
For him. It's not an easy business. It is not an easy business.
No.
But one of the things about music in general, songwriting in particular, collaboration, the ability to collaborate is key. Oftentimes it can, be the arbiter of success or not. What makes you a good collaborator?
I think it's humility, first of all. Like, you got to be able to respect what people are bringing to the table in the room. I've never looked at it as like a dictatorship, whether I'm writing or like the leader of a band. I think that it's having an open ear to, you got to be very confident in what you bring to the table, and you have to know when to stand your ground, but you have to have an open ear of communication and respect for the other people in the room, and they have to feel that. That's the main thing, is they have to feel that you trust them in a room.
Yeah. I think the first single from the first record,
Okay.
Mary Was the Marrying Kind.
Not the radio playing kind.
Right. So that was, that hit somewhere like number 45 or something.
I got lost in the oblivion.
Yeah. So the question is, were you disappointed with that?
Hell
or
yeah. Hell yeah, I was. My manager called me and he said, I thought we were fine. He called me one morning. He said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Oh shit." And he said, "Well, we're pulling your song from the chart." And I said, "What do you mean? I thought we were fine." He said, "Well, I couldn't believe he said this to me." And I still make fun of him all the time for it. He said, "Well, it's kind of like, when you've had a kid that everybody's like, oh, your kid's cute. And then all of a sudden your kid's not cute anymore." And I sat there and I said, "That's really the analogy you're going to go with." I'm brokenhearted. I just, so it was tough. It's tough. Because, I was telling somebody earlier, it's like, I think about all the other jobs I've done. And I've worked so many jobs before the music thing. Even though I would never trade what I do, I think about those other jobs I could just go into and I could kind of be mindless through the day, and I could kind of just do them, and I went home and the day just kind of started over. And even though I wasn't fulfilled, I never had that thing of what I feel now with even things like that, where you feel not good enough all the time with whatever it is, whether it's playing a show and seeing a despondent face in the crowd and you're like, I wasn't good enough to get them going, or whatever it is, playing your music for a whole team that shelves your record, whatever it is, there's just a lot of things you face on a daily basis that really messes with your mind and your soul, that can be pretty challenging at times.
Yeah, and you've experienced that.
Yes.
Many times. This is
Many times.
yeah, but you had, so first of all, so Mary Was the Marrying Kind, number 45. Then comes...
You don't have to keep saying that.
But there's a payoff. There's a payoff.
I hope there's a damn payoff. Because I'm starting to feel bad about myself again.
Something About a Truck.
Yeah.
Something About a Truck.
Yeah.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you're writing that song, when you're writing Something About a Truck, did you have any sense that this was a hit record?
Yeah.
You did?
I did. But I will say this, Dan and I wrote that song. We wrote a whole song. And when you listen to the whole record of Up All Night, it's a very meaty record. Like, Something About a Truck almost feels like a complete departure from the whole record.
Yeah.
And the fan base that actually has that record, they all know the record for Crazy One More Time and songs like that. But in the room that day, we spent a whole day writing a turd of a song, and we were done with that, and I've long forgotten what that song even was. And then I just started riffing around that bluesy riff of something out of truck. And Dan was leaving; he had to go home. He's got kids and a wife, and I didn't know that he was listening to me through the door that he'd already shut. And I was just kind of humming that melody and singing that riff. And he's outside writing a lyric to the first verse. And he just let me do my thing, and then he pops his head back in after about 10 minutes. And he says that whole first little stanza of a verse.
Right.
I said, you gotta call Tina Marie, sit down. And we wrote that thing in about an hour, and that's like that hour paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it, I've talked to any number of artists, and the best quote that I ever read, someone asked Keith Richard about, how he comes up with those memorable guitar riffs, how do you do that? And he goes, I don't so much write them as I receive them.
Yeah.
And that's gotta be kind of what it feels like when you write a song.
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day, you don't want to be trapped inside my brain, man. It's just nonstop of just stuff, and I want to shut it off a lot. And, it's honestly a blessing and a curse a little bit. Like, I can't get away from it. Like, sometimes I want to get away from it, but it's a nonstop thing. And I'm doing something I'm enjoying. I'm like, oh, shit, I got a lyric in my head now. I got to stop this, and I got to go over here. And it's just kind of something that, I thank God for it all the time. I'm glad that I'm able to do it. It's just something I've always had, and then once I learned the craft of how to put it all together, now it just kind of just free flows through me.
Yeah, you did your first 2 records. We talked about this upstairs with Brett James, who well-established Nashville songwriter.
Man, he's got blankets on his horses.
Yeah,
he's very well established.
Yeah. Hit after hit. Yeah, he's doing great.
He's doing okay. If you put blankets on your horses, you're doing okay.
But for a guy who's relatively new, untested, kind of needed not necessarily a mentor, but someone to kind of bring you along.
Yeah, we live in a world nowadays that it's everything has to be instant, and especially in the music business. It's just so like they want everything on a silver platter, and the development stages are kind of gone a little bit. And I was super fortunate to meet Brett at that time in my life because, man, he's a foxhole guy. And there's not a lot of foxhole people to me that I've come across in this world. And he just knew, it was like 4 years into it, 3 years into it, people were like, this guy's not paying you any dividends, you're just in the hole. His, it wasn't a big salary, but he was still in the hole.
Yeah.
But, they were like, it's probably time to cut ties, but he just kept being like, this guy's got something, I'm telling you, it's a different delivery. He always told me that I had a unique way of saying things and a unique melodic delivery. And he kind of always kept giving me that confidence, and he let me fail. He let me record anything that I wrote, which if new writers, that doesn't happen. He always just let me, he would challenge me in a room when we got done writing, or when I got done writing a song, and he'd critique it, and it's got some holes in it. I'd be like, no, it doesn't. I'm good, man. I'm good. Then I go record it, and I realized I had holes in it. But I had to go through that, and I learned so much in that process. So Brett will always be somebody that I love him to death outside of that, but I'm super in debt and thankful for Brett.
Yeah, and in addition to being a co-writer and a songwriter, he produced your first 2 records, and that feedback loop between producer and artist can make or break a project.
Yeah.
And you talked upstairs. You had some
back
and forth with
oh boy,
Brett.
we had some run-ins in the studio for sure. We're very different artistically. We're very different people, and there was a lot of headbutting. But we always come back to love after it was all said and done. But we co-produced the first 2 together, and it was a struggle. The Wild Ones record was a big struggle.
Yeah.
I had such a vision for what I wanted that record to be, and even though the production was a lot that was in my head, It was a struggle. And it was time for me when Slow Heart came around. I'd already had the blueprint for all those songs, and I'd lived with them for so long that I was like, it's just time to do this on my own.
Yeah, and you know, going back to what I was mentioning earlier in terms of kind of the ups and downs of a life in music, you've experienced that. In that, Up All Night, string of hits, #1, radio play, all kinds of stuff. You come to the second record, and the world changes.
Yeah, I mean, I had a whole record that got shelved before I even made Wild Ones, and that was heartbreaking. I just believed in that record so much, but when you're coming off of a record like Up All Night that was that massively commercially successful, I've always hated it when I get an artist's record, and I know exactly what it's going to sound like. I know what guitar tones are going to use. I know what they're going to say. I know what the grooves are going to be. I've never wanted to be that guy. And for me, coming off of Up All Night, which was written all on these nostalgic experiences I have, because I'd yet to travel the world, I'd yet to tour, and I was just writing from life in Tifton, Georgia, growing up, because that's all I knew.
Yeah.
So that record was special for what it was. It was time to move on from that. And then when I tried to move on, it was like, whoa, 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 hang on now. This made us big dollars, and we need another something about a truck. We need another Hey Pretty Girl. Where's your Hey Pretty Girl on this record? I was like, I already wrote that shit. It's over. It's time for something else, But it's like my mind was in a whole different spot, and I was living life in a whole different way. I was seeing through a whole different set of lenses, and it was, there's so much rock and roll in my blood, and I was stretching into some of that, for this next record, and then even more of it with Slow Heart. But yeah, I mean, it was a hard thing, and then to not have any commercial success, because any artist is lying when they say that they're not, like, Haggard was always saying I was dreaming of one last hit.
Yeah.
Petty was always wanting hits.
Oh, yeah.
You want hits, but you want hits to be done in the artistic fashion. You want to be able to stay true to yourself, but you always want those songs to somehow turn into hits because they bring in a whole crew of people that might not have known your music, and then you get the chance once they get in the door to hold them there, and that's the key. Can you hold them there? So for me, not seeing any of that commercial success that I'd seen on the first record, it was tough, and I was blinded and not really seeing what was happening. And what was happening was the fan base was doubling and tripling in size off a record that was completely underground.
Yeah.
And I was blinded by the weeds, and I was, it took me a while to come out of the crazy depression that I was in. But once I kind of looked around and was able to be like, holy cow, man, this record has been the changing point in our whole life. This has catapulted us into something completely different. Yeah, I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, well, and I think it proved to a certain degree that there is somewhat of a disconnect between, what radio likes and what the fans.
Yeah, I'm just going. I got myself in trouble a lot.
Well, I'm not looking to get you in trouble, but you've proven the point.
There's some songs that really, really, really connect, and what's happening on radio is what's happening in real life. And there's a lot of songs that is a complete disconnect. There's artists that will have all these hits and they can't fill up a bathroom with people. So, it's interesting, so it's I don't quite know how to put that into an equation of how that all fits and how it all works, but I do know that at times, I'm just gonna stay quiet.
Yeah. Here's what I will say. That, sometimes it's about the humanity. It's about who you are as a person and an artist that connects with an audience beyond what they hear on the radio.
I think also, and I understand this side too. Is I think that a lot of the industry people and even some of you, maybe your radio people, they're in their own world and they don't actually see what's actually somebody that they might be spending a ton that they think's a big deal that can't fill up a bathroom.
Right.
It's like a lot of times people don't know what's actually happening in the real world until they come out and they're like, whole.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this was going on.
Yeah, did they, were they at the, your last show in Akron?
So yeah, no.
Yeah.
So it's and I have it happen every time. Like when people actually come to our shows, whether it's radio or whether it's label or whether it's whoever, like, man, these people know all of your album cuts, and I'm like, I fucking know that.
Yeah.
It's like it's been happening for a long time, So, but that's a rarity. There's a few artists that that happens with,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a. Man, like I've said it so many times, I wouldn't trade. I know that I don't have it's big of a fan base as some. I know where it's going, but I wouldn't trade the fan base that I have and where I'm at my career for any artist in any genre right now.
Attaboy, Kip!
And here's an even more amazing fact, for a country artist. Internationally,
Yeah.
UK,
Yep.
Australia, Canada, these places where you go and you sell out and people love your music. Do you get, is it a different vibe?
Yeah, it's a different vibe from city to city,
Mm.
even in the States.
Yeah.
You cross the county line, and it's a completely different kind of people, and you're like, hang on, I just went 10 miles. What just happened? Is everybody on pills in this town? So, I mean, it's, everybody take a Valium before they walk in the door. No, but I mean, it is. It's, it is. Man, I gotta watch my mouth.
You're fine.
But I do. It's so different from city to city, from town to town. But yeah, I mean, UK audiences, it's a very visceral crowd. They're taking everything in internally, and I've kind of learned with a lot of them, like, if it's quiet, it doesn't mean they're not digging what you're doing. They're really in it. But then you have some places in England a little get wild as hell, but they have this great switch of knowing when to turn it on, when to turn it off, when to be respectful. Like it's an amazing audience, And then Australia is just wild as hell from start to finish. They drink beers out of their shoes.
Yes, they do. And one of the great things is the way you've maintained your relationship with your audience, and so here's something I pulled out, a quote of Charlie's about you, and he said, "Kip plays every show like it's the last he'll ever play."
Yep, he does.
Which I think is the highest compliment I've ever read about an artist. Why is that kind of level of commitment so
Well, I
important
look at
to
it
you?
like this. I look at it like I work crazy hard to get here, but God blessed me to be here. So I'm here. I'm one of the few people that really gets to wake up, and as hard as it is, I get to do what I love to do. And I also see it like that's my responsibility. These people work hard, they're coming to see you on a Monday, on a Tuesday night. They got to get up early. They got to do this and that. And a lot of times, I wake up all the time after long runs. Like, there was a run not long ago where I was gone for almost 50 straight days. And the band came home a couple times, and I had to do radio things, and I was still on the tour, and I was out west, and we went straight to Canada, came straight from the UK. It was, and there was times when I woke up, and I had so much anxiety about having to perform, and I'd go into this, like, almost like a panic mode of, you release so many endorphins. It's such an unnatural existence, and then you crash, and then you're trying to get back up, and then you crash, and it's just this, so, but I have to, like, every night I try to go through that convo in my head, and it's not that I'm having to get psyched up to do what I do because I love to do it, but there are times when you think there's nothing left in the tank. But I just look at it as it's my responsibility with those people that have worked hard and look forward to that moment, that I have to give them exactly what I gave the people the night before and then some.
And one of the things you decided to do in 2016 was to go away entirely.
I had to.
And for a long time.
I was losing my mind. I had
Yeah,
to.
but no, let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, where'd you go?
I went to Iceland. I went to
That's going away.
Costa Rica, Maui. I went up in the Northwest for a while. Grew my beard out. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of bounced around a lot.
Yeah.
I went down to the East Coast a little bit. I was just kind of all over the place.
What did you find out about yourself?
You know, I think that first off, I'm always learning about myself because I think that I've always been okay with solitude. I think solitude breeds thought, and I think a lot of people try to steer away from that. They try to mask by just going from one thing to the next, or from one relationship to the next, and then you never really learn anything about what just happened with the last one. I've always been trying to learn about myself and why I am the way I am, and I'm a basket case. But anyways, you know, I think that I learned, I think the main thing that I learned, and this is, I don't know how this is going to come across, but I'm going to say it anyway. But I don't know if music is something that I can do for a very long time. It's one of those things, to be honest, where I almost love it too much. And I've realized that through these times, my soul is very affected by the small things, by the big things. I've noticed that other people can just shake off things, and whether it's even having a bad show. Let's take something as simple as that. Screw it, let's go drink some beers. Where with me, I'll spiral for 24 hours, and I'll really spiral. So I don't know how to fix that, and I've tried, you know. And I've also learned that there's so many other things in this life that I really, really want. I never think about. It's something that I've always been okay with, not being on the hamster wheel and succumbing to feeling the pressure that I need to settle down now, and I need to do this, I need to do that. But it is something that I do want to do one day. I do want to have a kid and those kind of, you know, and I want to do tons of mission work, and I want to go around the world and do all these things, and do something that's so much bigger than myself, and give myself in a way that I've never done, and learn more about who I am and where I fit in the universe, where I fit with God, all those kind of things. So I think through all that, it was learning that I'm such a maniac when it comes to making music. I never stop. I can't turn it off. So it's one of those things where I may have to step away from it in some capacity to have these other things that I desire in my life. But it's never because I don't love it, it's because I love it too much.
Sure, but it completely understood. But in terms of what you get from your audience, what kind of feedback do you get from them about the songs and the impact that you talk about going around the world and having an impact? What are your fans telling you?
Oh man, I mean, you know, I even think about the documentary, The Journey to Slow Heart. I don't know who saw that, but you know, I've had, I mean, at the least 1,000 people probably come up and say that thing changed their entire life. That's a cool thing, and I try to focus not only in the music, but even through things like that documentary and social media. I try to show people that all this garbage is being pushed on them constantly, in these things that we're making it look like this is what success is. Let me take a picture of my private jet, let me show you my champagne, and let me show you my cars and my houses, and it's all bullshit. So I try to I try to show people that that is not what this life is about, and that's what I'm always trying to do, even through the music. So it's a cool thing, man, when you hear people telling you that that's what the music is doing, that's what the documentary is doing, that's what my social media presence is doing, is it's showing them these other things.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to ask you about in that vein is the video that you did for The Last Shot. Because number one, it's a very emotional video, and there's a backstory there to a certain degree in terms of what your intention
Yeah,
was
I mean,
there.
you know, it was initially, when we were writing that song, I was talking about my dad. I was talking about, you know, man, I wish I'd have gone home one more time, and, you know, this and that. You know, and I was also talking about people in my life that I've let slip through my fingertips, and maybe one or two of them, like that was, I should have told them how I really, really felt about them. I'd probably still let them slip through my fingertips, but I just need to tell them. You know, but that's how the whole song came about. And then when we were going to make the video, PJ Brown, he's just incredible. He's one of my dear friends, and we got to talking about really flipping the concept of what people are going to think. We're just thinking it's just this love song, and we wanted to tap into that thing of the actual feeling that so many have had that have lost, like truly, truly lost loved ones, and they're not getting it back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I saw the video, I went right back to losing my father.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
just
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
heavy. It's
Yeah.
a heavy video.
yeah, but really, really well done. So one of the other things we're gonna ask for a couple questions from the house here in just a minute. So I think it was there were some tracks from Slow Heart that seemed to get some traction on rock radio
Yeah, in Europe.
in Europe. Your thinking about that is
Wait till I put out this next record.
well. All right, good.
Attaboy!
So tell me a little bit, because I'd read something that you
kick
had.
that whole door down.
Yeah, that you had an interest in going in that direction. Natural evolution, or something where you kind of got to kick yourself in the ass to get.
No, I think
there?
it's just the natural evolution of where the music is going. I mean, and when you hear me sing, I mean, that's just, I've always had that influence in the vocal side of it. And, you know, the records have started to lean more and more that way as it's gone. You know, and there's still lots of that, you know, there's still the definite country influences and the storytelling in there. But I've always been a rock and roll baby.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, there's just a lot of that bleeds through the music. And like I said, this next record, it's going a whole nother step forward.
Good for you. That's great. So we got time for a couple questions.